Dark skies can be a wonderful way to get yourself, your family and your friends involved in something called citizen science. Citizen science projects call on everyday people like you and me from all over the world to take part in the collection and analysis of data covering a huge range of topics. This data is usually used by professional scientists to understand and solve environmental problems. Here in the UK, we have a great citizen science project around dark skies, and we are really lucky to have Emma Marington here with us today to tell us how we can all become citizen scientists and help save our stars. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you do?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. My name is Emma Marington. I work for CPRE, the Countryside Charity, and the area of work I do, particularly dark skies, but also landscape work as well, so national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty and hedgerows as well. So quite a diverse range of things.
Of course, it's Welsh Dark Skies Week, so tell us, what is your citizen science project?
Yes, of course. So every year, CPRE runs a star count. So it's a really easy way to get people looking up at the night sky and looking at the Orion constellation. So it's one of the most commonly known in the night sky. So you're looking towards the south in the evening. So we recommend definitely after 7 p.m. So it's dark enough to see Orion. The southern sky, so satellite dishes point in that direction.
That's a good
that helps orientate yourself.
Yeah.
And what we're asking people to do is count the number of stars they can see in the Orion constellation. So lots of people will see the four corner stars. We'd hope they see the four corner stars, and count the number of stars you can see using the four corner stars. Lots of people are familiar with the 3-star belt, so it goes around at an angle. And then if you can see 10 or fewer stars, that indicates you're in an area with severe light pollution. But if you can count more than 30, that's truly dark skies. So, for example, last year, with the results, we had about 8,000 people take part in star count, which was fantastic, the most ever, which was wonderful. But we found that 51% of participants counted 10 or fewer stars, so severe light pollution, but that was actually down from the year before when it was 61%. And so we were thinking that could have been the lockdown effect. So it was around the time of the first lockdown, and so there are fewer people moving around, with business lighting, maybe external lighting.
Yeah.
So that could have reduced the ambient light pollution during that star count.
So when people are thinking about maybe doing this star count, do they have to live in a dark sky area, or are you interested in people going out anywhere across the UK?
We want everybody who can, wherever they are, to take part, because it's citizen science, and what it will help do is create a picture of the nation's views in the night sky. So with all of the star counts submitted around the UK, we'll create an interactive map. So you'll be able to see, when we launch the results of the star count, you'll be able to see how you compare, how your areas compare. And
a bit of competition, I can imagine.
Yeah. So that's it. Wherever you are, it's really important to take part, take that time. And, we say after 7 in the evening, it will take place from the 26th of February to the 6th of March. So that's around the darkest natural time, the new moon. And let your eyes adjust when you go outside to have a look at the night sky. So we recommend at least 20 minutes. So your eyes adapt to the darkness as well. So the longer you're out there, obviously turn off external lighting too. If you're at home, the longer you're out there, your eyes will adjust to the night sky, and you'll hopefully see more stars in the Orion constellation as well.
Yeah, it's a great constellation. It's probably one of the first that people learn, isn't it? And start to recognise. It's the Campaign for Protection of Rural England, isn't it? The CPRE. So is it just people in England, or are you open to people from Scotland and Wales?
Well, we're now our new name. We're CPRE, the Countryside Charity, and
Oh,
we're there for everybody, for urban and rural places. And with the star count, it's for everybody around in Scotland, in Wales, in Ireland, in England. Obviously, Welsh Dark Skies Week, great opportunity to be talking about the star count and to get everybody together to build up that picture of the nation's view.
so if people wanted to get involved with the week and input their
Mm.
data, how would they do that, Emma?
Yeah, of course. Well, if you go to our website, it's cpre.org.uk. And in fact, it's on the homepage. But if you want the actual page to come up, just put star counts on the end of it, /star counts. And that will show you all the details about how to take part. It will have the web form as well. So when you do actually have your star count, so you could make a night of it, for example, go out wherever, whether it's a urban area, dark sky place. Now you've got some great dark skies in Wales. And look up the night sky, maybe take a flask of tea or hot chocolate if you're feeling very decadent, and then make a night of it. So wrap up warm and have that wonder of looking up at the night sky.
I've just been having a little nose at the website now whilst you gave me the address, and you've got some really good resources on there as well. So if people are a bit daunted, it's all on there. It's really simple, actually.
That's it.
And once people have got their number, they just put it into the website, do they?
Yeah. So go onto the website and then so submit your information. Obviously, you need to have I assume we'd have what 3 words, the location as well as the postcode, so we can locate where people's star counts have been happening. And then, as I say, we then produce that interactive map of where people are seeing the most stars, where people are seeing the fewest stars, so to show that variation. And it's interesting how in 2016, actually a few years ago now, we published these night light maps. They're satellite maps of the amount of light spilling up in the night sky at 1:30 in the morning throughout September 2015. And there's a lot of light. And but when you actually, it's one of the things we do with the interactive map, if we have you can switch on the night light mapping as well.
Clever.
And you can see how there is definitely there is a pattern.
Yeah.
There are variations because what people see from the ground and the amount of light spilling up into the night sky, with the difference of lighting design, it can vary, but it still shows that there are the darker places, there are the places that do have more lighting. But I think another thing I've been pondering when I've been in the star count is relative darkness.
Yeah.
So I live southwest London, so it's definitely not a dark sky place like you have in many parts of Wales, but the relative darkness. So if I went to a green space in the evening to look at the star, or moonlit walk coming up to Christmas with a flask and a mince pie, that sort of thing, and that relative darkness, and then when you go out of the place and go towards the streetlights, it's very stark. So even though that's not intrinsic darkness, it's still relative darkness, and that's still important. So whether it's in an urban area, the edges of an urban area, you'll still have that relative darkness. It's that experience, that quality.
Yeah, people really need to have those experiences to really experience the night, don't we? Because so many of us just don't. And those night light maps must be quite interesting, because I bet you do get some people who are a bit competitive and they might fib a little bit about how many stars they're seeing, and you think, I don't even think it's quite that dark where you are. But it's great to get people out. Why would you say this work is important? Why is it important that we collect this data, and how is it going to be used?
Well, it's important because, as I say, it helps us build up a picture about what people are seeing from the ground. And the reason the Orion constellation is so handy for that is because we have been running Star Count for many years, and it's become an annual event since 2019. And then we can build up, see those changes. And of course, there are different people taking part. It's not the same people every time. And I should have said as well, it's with the naked eye, so no binoculars, no telescopes for sure. You see a lot more stars that way. And that's why it's so important to build up that citizen science evidence. And then we can identify the areas that do have the darkest skies, and we've got CPRE groups. So in every English county, I know CPRW in Wales, and the equivalent in Scotland too. And building up that picture, and then being able to lobby local councils to improve their lighting. So it's building up the evidence to make the case for better lighting, reduced lighting in areas too, and protecting the existing dark skies we've got, but also enhancing places that are those relative dark places that can be improved through better approaches to lighting.
Yeah, and it is so important that urban communities do get involved, because they're the people who are most at risk from the health aspects of light pollution.
Yeah.
That's one of the messages we try to get out. Like, yes, rural skies are great and we want to protect them, but also we're at risk from urban pollution because it erodes over. It doesn't stick, does it, just to the urban area?
Absolutely. That's the thing, because light doesn't respect boundaries, does it? It will go out from towns and cities and that glow out into the countryside. And so it does blur. It can have that impact on the dark sky places around the country, the really intrinsically dark skies.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, people sometimes think citizen science, is it really science? But it absolutely is. And there's been huge breakthroughs, and the data that these people collect is so important, and it's really important to the work you do, obviously. It's important, and it shapes policies like the APPG for dark skies.
Absolutely.
They in the work you do.
Yeah,
I would urge, as I'm sure you do, that anybody, no matter how light polluted they are, even if you don't see any stars, that's equally as important, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. If you're looking in the direction, hopefully, I mean, I've counted, you know, South West London, I don't count many stars. I counted the most last year, which was 9 in the Orion constellation. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Because before, you know, it had been like 6 or 7. So, you know, I noticed that change. And so that was, you know, for me that was very good. But I'm sure, you know, in various places, you know, around the country, you know, in Snowdonia, for example, you'll have some really great dark skies, Brecon Beacons too, really, really high quality dark skies, and you should see definitely more than I would see in South West London, but it will vary around the country.
You'll have to do your London count, and then the next night you'll have to come up to Wales.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I see such a difference.
You would. And I encourage absolutely everyone who's listening to this, if you are in Wales, you know, get out and get our Welsh measurements on the map, because it would be really interesting to see how we differ to the other countries. But I'm really grateful for the work you do, Emma, as well, because it does shape what we do and it affects what we do. And you've got such a central role there in London, being so close to Westminster and influencing those policies there. So thank you for the work you do. But also it is just such an excellent excuse, the star count, for people to go out and look up. But thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Dani.
It's been great. It's been so interesting and really lovely to hear from you. Even though you're in London, you know, people think, well, what's the point? But cities, it's definitely important. Get out there.
Absolutely.
But one last thing, just before I let you go. Could you share with us your very first dark sky memory? You might have to cast your mind.
Oh, I can.
Oh, you can?
My mum used to take me youth fossiling a lot when I was growing up. And it was actually in the North York Moors National Park, a place called Wheeldale Youth Hostel. It's since closed. And I woke up in the night and I thought, oh, it's so dark. And I went to the window and I looked, and it was just the stars. And it was absolutely, and you know, those evenings sort of walking back across the moor to the youth hostel.
Oh, lovely.
Just the night sky was absolutely wonderful. And you know, I grew up near Heathrow Airport, so I didn't get, you know, great dark skies at all. So to have those experiences of getting out, it's such a memory. And you know, things like, you know, in many urban areas you won't see the Milky Way, but if you're in a truly dark sky place, you might have potential to. But I can't actually remember. I must have seen the Milky Way. I cannot remember ever seeing it myself. Although I've seen really starry sky, I can't remember ever seeing the Milky Way. So I've still got that to tick off my bucket list.
You'll have to come to Wales.
Yeah.
Every time I went to the North York Moors, unfortunately, it was always very cloudy. But imagine how dark it is up there. I've been
Absolutely.
told there's a good heartbeat tour up in the
Oh,
north.
there is. Yes, yes. My mum used to like Heartbeat. So yes, we went to
Oh,
Gosling there. So she's where it's set.
no, but it's great. It's funny, isn't it? We do remember those times in our childhood where the
Mm,
stars, they really captivate you as a child, and it's so
absolutely.
important that kids still get these experiences, isn't it?
That's the thing. That's exactly it. And that is why with the star count, it's, everybody taking part, because with the evidence we can gather, the nation's views, it helps us make the case for better approaches nationally and locally, so that we can have more better views of the stars for future generations to enjoy.
Absolutely. And with the advantages we're making with lighting and the dark sky
Mm,
lighting, there's no excuses now. We can,
yeah.
it is possible and we can do it. And we will, won't we, Emma? Together.
Yes, yes, yes. It's obviously fantastic work you're doing as well, Dani. So thank
Well,
you as well.
thanks so much for your time. It's been excellent, really. And I hope to speak to you soon. We'll see you in Wales soon, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully.
Thanks, Emma.
All right. Thank you.
Our national parks and AUNBs not only celebrate our beautiful landscapes and wild spaces, they are also home to rich tapestries of heritage and history that tell stories of how life in these places have evolved and changed over time. Eryri is no different, ranging from the newest UNESCO World Heritage Site and Ruggles, our museum showcasing the life of the poet Hedd Wyn in World War One, to the castles which tell the tales of struggles between rulers, and back further than the mind can possibly imagine to places like Tom and Awyr, where history is hidden a bit more subtly amongst the landscape. Above this treasure trove of history, the stars have always shone, a constant overseeing our very existence, from the beginning of human time. But what did our ancestors make of the heavens above? It's a really big question, but luckily I have astroarchaeologist Professor Clive Ruggles here with me today. Hello, Clive, how are you doing?
Hi there, Dani. Fine, thank you.
So, Clive, an astroarchaeologist is an amazing title. So could you tell me what exactly is an astroarchaeologist?
Well, the first thing to say is we tend to call ourselves archaeoastronomers. We don't put it the other way round. There's
Astronomers.
historical reasons for that, though astroarchaeology is fine. But yeah, so we have an interest in how people in the past understood the skies and how they lived with the skies. And that may seem like a pretty obscure question, but then, most of us live under streetlights today and we forget about what the sky looked like. Those people were living with the sky. Every dark night, people would see the stars out there when it wasn't cloudy. And that would be as much a part of their world as all the landscape around them and the things going on around them. And they strove to understand that. So what we're trying to do is to understand how people understood the sky, how they related to the sky, and also what that meant for them in social terms, how that played out in socially. And that's a big important question sometimes too.
They're hugely massive questions, and it must be so interesting. So how did you even get started in such a fascinating job?
Well, it goes back even to my school days where I was always pulled in two directions because I loved history and I loved astronomy. And they were my two big interests. And so I got into the sixth form at my school, and history meant writing essays and I wasn't so keen, whereas astronomy meant doing maths and I was quite good at maths. So I went the astronomy route, and I was going to be an astronomer. In fact, I had my doctorates in astrophysics.
Oh, wow.
But even by the time I got there, really when I was an undergraduate, I started to mix with people who had an interest in those days in ancient stone circles in Scotland and Ireland particularly, and how they related to the sun. And there were some pretty elaborate theories around in those days. And I got inspired by that. And we started, as a group of us, started to go and look at these sites. And it sort of played on from there. One by one, the others went off and scattered and went off and became astronomers and other things. But I kind of stuck with it. So that became a lifelong interest.
Oh, thank goodness you did, Clive, because it's a lot to make sense of, isn't it? And we need people like you to really understand the lives of people and how important the night skies were. And of course, in Wales, it was no different. So here in Wales and here in Eryri, it seems we can't move for historic places. Everything seems to have had a meaning from a very long time ago. And, the stars are no different. When we look up at the stars, these are the same stars that those people were seeing. So it ties us back to this heritage, and you can't really talk about astronomy without talking about history, can you? Because it's all linked. So could you tell me, are there any sites around North Wales or Wales in general that are definitely connected to the stars in the way you describe?
Well, the stars is one thing. The sky is another. So, I mean, the one I'd start with, the big one I'd start with is Bryn Celli Ddu, which is the tomb on Anglesey. And that, like many tombs around the place, is associated with the sun. And I guess, as some people listening will know, that's aligned with the midsummer sunrise. So what happens is that the sun shines down into the tomb when it rises around midsummer's morning, and of course, that's not telling us it was any sort of observatory. It's telling us that there was something in people's minds back then that meant that they were relating death and ancestors and ancestor spirits, because that's what the tomb was about, with the sun and seasonal renewal and the seasonal cycles. And it's that connection which I think is what the site tells us. So not all tombs are related to the sun, but that is one of the ones that are scattered around the whole of Britain and Ireland that is related to the sun, and it's a fantastic site. The other thing I'd say quickly about that, if I can, is this: you don't actually have to go there on midsummer's morning exactly, because where the sun rises around midsummer doesn't change very much for those few days. You could go there a week beforehand and a week afterwards, and it would still, as far as you could see, be setting in the same place, and the alignment would still work. And of course, that's why it didn't matter to people if it was actually cloudy on the solstice, because they had a longer run, to get the alignment.
That's interesting. And of course, as part of my project, we work with Anglesey AUNB as well, and the other areas of outstanding natural beauty. And you'll be coming along, won't you, around midsummer to Bryn Celli Ddu with us. So we're going to actually have an event with you there, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. That's going to be great. Yeah,
it will be really, really good. And of course, light pollution, it's only been around in modern times, hasn't it? So in terms of humans, we've been around a lot longer than electric lights. So it's only been about 100 years. But in the past 25 years, light pollution has grown globally by an estimated 400%. It's huge. Yeah. I imagine before artificial light, the night sky would have been amazing for everyone, and it would have been a lot more culturally significant to the lives of everyday Britons and people around the world, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so I don't know how many people listening will have had the chance to ever see a truly dark night sky. I mean, I was born and brought up in London suburbs, and I was lucky if I could see 4 stars in Orion of a night amongst the sodium glare, and I remember that as a kid. You move out into the middle of country, you can see some of the brightest stars in the sky, but you don't see even the Milky Way going across the sky until you get into a pretty dark place, and that's fantastic. I mean, about 10 years ago I was in Australia once, in away from the coast, away from built up areas, and someone called me up out of a tent in the middle of the night to come and look at the emu in the sky.
Oh, cool.
And I have never seen such a dark sky. I mean, when the sky is that dark, it's just covered in stars. You don't see the constellations because it's just like a carpet of stars, and the Milky Way sort of sits there, and you actually visualize it's behind. It's a fantastic sight. You see these dark patches and other things in the sky. It's quite incredible, and you have to be in a truly dark sky place to see that. But that's what people in the past lived with every night when it wasn't cloudy. So we can only remember that really by experiencing that. And of course, the dark sky parks are important because that's as dark as we can get in Britain, and that's a fantastic experience for people as well.
Yeah, and I'm really proud that in Eryri we have our reserve, and we are doing so much work to keep it dark and to make the dark a better quality as well. Because, like you said, there are places in the national park in Eryri where we can, there's so many stars. I can't pick out the constellations. It's that many stars, and it boggles the mind. But how do you think light pollution impacts the heritage aspect of these sites?
Well, I think the one of the important things about the sites is to try and understand them in their context, and that means landscape and it means skyscape. So there are lots of projects around, like at Stonehenge itself, to try and keep sites as free as possible of development, so you can return sites to their landscape. And that's one of the things that trying to remove the road that goes past Stonehenge is all about. But part of that for me is also restoring things to their skyscape. So, for us in the modern world, we think, if it's up in the sky, it's astronomy. If it's in the landscape, if it lives, it's zoology. If it's a plant, all that sort of thing. Because we divide the world up. This is Linnaeus goes back 200 years. That's the way we do science. But in the past, people understood things by connecting everything together.
Yeah.
So, they didn't understand things in the sky as objects up there that they understood in a different way. It was all connected, and they understood these connections. Some of them made good sense. They when they see certain stars appearing, they would know that was the time to do things, to plant crops and so on. But there'd be all manner of other connections in their minds. And of course, the frustrations for us, if you like, for being prehistorians, for being archaeologists, is of course we can't get directly into people's minds. What we have to do is to go on the indirect evidence that sites and monuments give us. And so when we see these aligned monuments, that's one way that we can start to understand that relationship that people had with the skies.
It is amazing, and I think we've got a lot of myths and legends in Wales, but not a lot of people realise that we've actually got our own names for the constellations. And as you've just mentioned, that it was that connection to the land and the seasons and how the year moved. We have a lot of our constellations are connected to agriculture in the stories. You do have to be careful. Some people are a little bit liberal with their storytelling, and they might they make it a little bit more exciting than it may possibly have originally been. But we do have really fascinating aspects. So one of the places they didn't even realise themselves, the National Trust, until I was doing an event there, and I saw this stained glass window in Castell Penrhyn Castle. And it's in the main house, and it's this huge, beautiful stained glass window. And in one side, it's got the constellations, and on the other pane, it's got agricultural scenes. So it's almost like a calendar showing you the agricultural calendar through the year. And they'd never even really taken notice of it. And I was like, that is incredible. But culturally, stars have always been important to us, haven't they? And they still are to a lot of cultures around the world. So not even, we look at things through quite a Western lens, don't we?
Absolutely.
But there's so many cultures that are being impacted today by light pollution. So could you tell us a bit more about those different cultures and how light pollution could negatively impact those?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough to do a lot of work in the Pacific, in Hawaii in particular.
You are very lucky. That's a little humble brag, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course, the huge cultural heritage there is the Polynesians who came out and spread around the Pacific around the year 1000. And they basically navigated the huge Pacific. I mean, the size of it boggles. It's half the globe, right? Yeah. And yet they navigated around and found these islands, navigated between them for many centuries. And this surprised Westerners like Cook, who arrived, and then suddenly discovered people on all these little tiny scattered islands that the Western were only just discovering. And of course, one way they navigated around the Pacific was by the stars. There were other ways too, ocean swells and other things, but a major navigation tool was the stars. They knew the stars, and that has embedded itself, the importance of how they arrived on the islands and their knowledge of the stars embedded itself culturally in for people. And so, in many places, some of the places I'm aware of in Hawaii, which are sacred sites still, and sites that celebrate this navigation heritage. But of course, the light pollution affects that, because those connections to the sky, to the stars in those sites, is threatened by that light pollution. So, I mean, that's just one example. All around the world, people see their own cultural stuff in the sky, if you like, reflecting the sky. So Orion for us is a hunter because of the Greek tradition. But in the Pacific, there are lots of legends that make Orion is seen as a canoe, Or there are, the Orion's belt can be 3 people in a canoe, and of course Orion's on its side. You see it from the equator, and you have the canoe shape. In Southeast Asia, it's very often an adze and things for agriculture. There are different ways around the world that people relate to that sky, and of course that is threatened when people can't see those skies anymore. That cultural heritage is then being cut off.
It must be really distressing for them. And I've recently been looking into some other cultures, like the Lakota Star people, the Native Americans, and the stars to them. And unfortunately for them, their lands are quite close to Las Vegas, which must be the most likely to place on the planet. But, to have that eroded and have no choice, the night sky really should be a resource for everyone, shouldn't it? It's an absolute travesty that 98% of Europeans don't get a good quality night sky. It should be a national treasure, shouldn't it? There's so much. It's pushed us outside ourselves. We wouldn't have gone to the moon if we couldn't have looked at the stars first, could we? But yeah, there's lots of fascinating places in the UK, like Scotland and Ireland, isn't there? So what would you say would be your favourite dark sky related site in the UK?
Oh, do you know, I think possibly I would have to go to the Isle of Lewis, out in the northwest of Scotland, out in the Outer Hebrides. Callanish is a beautiful stone circle site. It's a double stone. It's a stone circle with rays of standing stones, and you've got the dark skies there. It clearly relates to the 4 cardinal directions, perhaps to the moon, certainly to the sun. And you see those connections there. Of course, we can never say in the past precisely how many of these how these skies were related to particular stars. There's too many possibilities. We don't know, but we can be sure that they were. And for me, that's one of the best sites for conjuring up those thoughts, and just in a way, just trying to experience a little bit from our perspective of what they must have experienced in the past.
I'm adding that to my list of places to visit. Thank you very much. I could talk to you about this for forever, but our podcast only has a short amount of time. But just before I let you go, one of the things I'm asking contributors is where or what is your first memory of a dark sky? So, can you think back to either a memory? So one of my first ones is I grew up on a council estate. So I remember trying to see one of the first comets that came by, and we couldn't see it because we were too light polluted. So my first dark sky memory isn't really a dark sky memory, but it was what triggered my interest. So what sort of memories and what was it that really got you interested?
I suppose, as I was saying, because I was brought up in southeast London, sodium lights or yellow skies, soupy skies, and so the times when I could even get out down into Sussex and Kent, where it was relatively dark and I could see more, were good. But the experience that sticks in my mind was that one I was telling you about earlier. But so do you mind me telling you again about?
I don't mind.
It wasn't the first dark sky, but it was certainly the most wonderful. And I was camping out in Australia. We were looking at some Aboriginal places with a guy who was well, he's probably as close to Crocodile Dundee you can imagine in a sort of academic form. He'd take visitors and students and people out into the bush for trips and things. But anyway, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he said, "Clive, come and look at the emu." And I'm saying, "John, I don't want to get up. It's 3 o'clock in the morning." But that was, he wanted me to get up, not only because the sky was superb that night, and it really sticks in my mind still as just a canopy of glittering stars, but also because the Milky Way was right overhead. So it was one huge band that went right from side to side, right overhead. And in the southern hemisphere, you're looking towards the center of the galaxy, which means that there's actually, it's very bright. There's also dark clouds. They're actually out there in space and obscuring bits of the Milky Way. You see these dark patches, and in that configuration, these dark patches come together, and it's as though there's this long figure, and it really is like an emu. It's like a long, elongated shadow emu that stretches up halfway up the sky from one side.
Wow.
And you think, how can we in the Western world sort of imagine constellations by joining the dots when here's this actual huge shape of an emu looming above me in the sky? And that for me was a sort of revelation moment, really.
And even that in itself is so different, isn't it? We look at the patterns in the lights and they almost find the patterns in the dark, in the absence of the light, which is really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just find all the different cultures so amazing. And I think, you get taught in school, we maybe know our modern astronomers, but it goes so far back. Like some of the oldest ones have been, cave paintings, haven't there, where they've, we've proved that people, before we were really writing, we were painting the stars and the Babylonians. So could you remind me, what is the name of that cave painting? I never learnt French in school, and I don't want to butcher it.
Lascaux, Lascaux. It does have an X on the end. Yeah, where you've got these cave paintings of bulls and things, and also there are things that look like they're the Pleiades. People have said, oh, it's a bull, so it must be Taurus. Of course, there's no connection there because this is much, much older. But the star configurations do look as if they were deliberately looking at the stars, so painting the stars.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's 30,000 years ago.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. It's been really fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to your online talk on Friday. So, it is Friday. So
yes, it is.
That.
It is.
Yes, yeah. And then I'm really, really excited to meet you in person for the first time, because we've been doing everything through the pandemic, haven't we?
We have indeed.
So that'll be amazing to have you to come and see Brynkeli Day. So that will be excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Clive.
Okay, thank you, Dani.
In 2016, Snowdonia National Park gained global recognition when it was awarded International Dark Sky Reserve status. One of only 20 in the world, our darkness is now protected for future generations to enjoy. As part of this designation, other areas in North Wales began to consider dark sky conservation seriously, and as a result, the 3 areas of outstanding natural beauty have come together with the National Park to form Project North. The aim is to gain protected status for all 3 areas. With me now, I have David Shield, manager of the Clwydian Range and Dee Valley AUMB. Hi, David.
Hi, Dani.
How are we today? Are we okay?
Yeah, all good today, I think.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the Clwydian Range, your job, the AUMB as a whole?
Yeah, well, the Clwydian Range and Dee Valley AUMB is in North East Wales. It's just on the sort of border, quite close to sort of the English border. So in terms of, our dark skies, it's, it's an area that, perhaps gets quite a bit of light pollution from Chester, Merseyside, Deeside, perhaps. So we've been particularly concerned about preserving the night skies. We've got very dark skies in parts of the AUMB, but obviously light pollution has always been a bit of an issue for us as well.
Yes, you do have some really great areas of darkness, don't you? And if you look on a light pollution map, it's quite surprising to some people to see just how dark you are in areas. But when did you, as an AUMB, and you yourself, start to think about the dark skies above the Clwydian Range and Dee Valley and take them a bit more seriously as a conservation issue?
It was around about 2018 that we first sort of commissioned some work to look at the quality of our skies and what the potential would be for us to protect the darkness of those areas. So, and that's, you're quite right, that's when we sort of realised that, the quality of the skies across the Clwydian Range and Dee Valley AUMB is surprisingly good, despite our proximity to Chester, Merseyside and Deeside. So we started to think about what we could do to promote that, get people out celebrating, the quality of our skies, not just for the, sort of stargazing, but also, the biodiversity that the sort of dark skies support, and to get some things in place that would help us to protect the quality of the darkness through sort of guidance on lighting and things like that.
You've been doing loads of really good work in the Cymru Range and Dee Valley, haven't you? So can you tell us a bit more about the last sort of 3 years and what kind of work you've been doing?
Well, initially it's really about raising the profile of where the sort of dark skies fit in. I think, you know, we're a designated landscape, so everybody knows that the landscape of the Cymru Range and Dee Valley is outstanding. We don't often think about the dark skies aspect of it as being one of the special qualities of the area. You know, we all sort of go into our houses at night and, you know, that's it. We may have enjoyed a nice walk in the hills during the daytime, but actually the quality of the skies are really part of the tranquility and the sort of wildness that the area is important for. So we've been trying to get that message across, getting people out on stargazing events, on sort of nocturnal nightlife events over the last few years, just getting people out into the countryside at night. But we've also been trying to, you know, have conversations with our tourism businesses as well to raise the profile of, you know, the potential for astro sort of tourism, if you like. You know, our tourism businesses have had a bit of a tough time, obviously, over the last couple of years. So astro tourism is something that can really help to extend the season into the winter months. So, and there's been a massive amount of interest from our tourism businesses in sort of capitalising on that and wanting to know more about it. So we've been having some really good conversations with them, and I suppose more technically, we've also been trying to get some guidance in place through our planning system to ensure that, you know, any new lighting that goes up in the AONB sort of conforms to good practice, so that we can sort of reduce the amount of light pollution that, you know, might be happening through new developments. So we've got some supplementary planning guidance in place now to sort of help us with that.
That's really, really important. And I think people think of dark skies and sometimes they can think of it as a tourism trick, or it's just something to pull people in the winter. But you are doing really important work when it comes to things like the health of residents and the health of the biodiversity in the area. And the supplementary planning guidance is a huge part of that. And it's not something that gets talked about because I guess it's not one of the fun elements that people can get involved in. But if people were interested in doing the right thing with their lights, they could find the supplementary planning guidance, couldn't they, on your website?
You're right, the supplementary planning guidance is on our website, and, you know, although, you know, as you say, it's a bit of a technical document, you know, what we found is, you know, as we've been doing this work over the last few years, it's one thing that our residents across the AONB really want to talk about. It's something that they take very, very seriously. We have lots of people talking to us about, you know, inappropriate lighting in their, you know, particular area that's affecting their lives, you know, new street lights that might have gone up, or you know, poor lights that are affecting the quality of their life. So it is something that people are really concerned about, even though, you know, it comes down to sort of, you know, technical sort of guidance documents. So, and also, you know, in terms of the events that we've been running, they're amongst the most popular events that we run. You know, people really are fascinated by the night skies and the stars. So, you know, we've been really, you know, sort of taken by how enthusiastic people are about this subject and how important it is to people.
It is, and I think where you are positioned as well, being so close to the English border, where you have those big pockets of cities where they are light polluted, you're the easiest place and the quickest place for them to get to. So they're the people who are really missing out, I suppose. They know what they're missing because they are so light polluted. They're not seeing any stars at night. So if they want to go stargazing and they want to experience a tranquil nighttime, the Cymru Range and Dee Valley is one of the easiest places for them to get to, isn't it? What would be your favourite sites, or what sites around the Cymru Range and Dee Valley would you recommend to people if they wanted to come out in the night and explore your dark skies? Where would you send them to?
Well, we've identified 4 areas in the AONB that we're sort of calling dark sky discovery sites. So, and they're the sort of you know, really accessible places, you know, in the central part of the Cymru Range at Mole Arthur, at Llangwyfan and at Mulfamau. So we have, you know, car parks for the country parks there, and they're really dark areas at night. So you know, fantastic places to do a bit of stargazing. So and also in the Dee Valley, I would recommend either the Horseshoe Falls just outside Llangollen, or Caedrewin in Corwen. The skies above Corwen are fantastic for stargazing. We've had some brilliant events there over the last few years where we've been able to see the Milky Way with the naked eye, and sort of shooting stars and all kinds of things. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen some really good photos and things from that way as well. One of the main aims, I guess, of this as well eventually is to get your own accreditation through the International Dark Sky Association. So all this work you've been doing, it's all been collected, and you've been collecting all this evidence and doing all the planning side of it. So how far away do you think that designation is? Do people want it to be a dark sky site? Do you think, do people want it to have the designation?
The designation, I think, will help to raise the importance of dark skies. So we'd hope to put that application into the International Dark Sky Association this year. But really, all of the work that we've been doing over the last few years and the engagement that we've had from, people living in the AONB and people visiting the AONB, that's the important thing, to make sure that we put dark skies, right there at the centre of what people care about. And, we found that it is something that people care about. So the accreditation from the IDA will help to keep that profile raised, and it will help us to sort of monitor the quality of our skies and to sort of create that structure where we can, keep all of these things in place and, keep that engagement going. But I think, already we've done an awful lot to see improvements in the way the skies are going in the Clwyddian Range and Dee Valley.
You have done so much, and it's like you say, even if you didn't get the designation, you're doing these things because it's the right thing to do. It's better for human health, it's better for the biodiversity in the area, and you've been leading by example. So you've been doing lots of work around retrofitting, and one of the things you've been doing is looking at your own buildings and your own sites, isn't it? And looking how you could improve those. So could you tell us a little bit more about the retrofitting project?
Yeah, well, we produced some guidance document, which is also on our website, about how you can improve the external lighting, of your homes or your businesses, in sort of some fairly straightforward ways. And then we thought, well, hang on a minute, we better get our own house in order as well, because some of the buildings that we look after in the AONB, have been lit in ways that we've in a very sort of straightforward ways. If you've got areas of darkness around the buildings, you stick a light up on the corner of the building, and suddenly that area is floodlit. We've all done it in the past. It's kind of quite common just to see floodlights on buildings. So that's what happened at Loggerheads Country Park. So we took a look at that, and we've replaced all the lights around the car park at Loggerheads and around the buildings, so they're now all conform to sort of the best practice. So the colour temperature of the lights are below 3000 Kelvin, which is really, really important for biodiversity, particularly sort of nocturnal insects, and they're all motion censored. So actually, when there's nobody there, the lights aren't on. Lights don't need to be on when there's nobody there. So when there's nobody there, the lights are off, which is fantastic. So it's really transformed Loggerheads, and because the lights are directed only to where they're needed, actually, we haven't got the shadows that floodlights tend to create. So it's actually much more effective lighting, much better for biodiversity, and not polluting light into the night sky. They're all fully shielded lights. So I think Loggerheads now provides an example of what can be achieved, and we'd hope to sort of talk to other businesses or public sector buildings where we might be able to do the same.
Yeah, I got to go and see Loggerheads at night for the first time a couple of nights ago, and it looks so much better, and it looks much more inviting, and it just looks like a nice place. And you've got quite fancy lights, haven't you? So they can actually be turned all the way down to red, haven't they, if you want to do an event like around bats or astronomy. But you've also left an element so that if you've got an emergency at the centre, you can turn the lights on to full power, because you do have some emergencies there, don't you, like flooding and things on occasion where you need some emergency lighting. So you can use lights so effectively there.
Yeah, we can whack the floodlights on if we need to in an emergency. And you're right, the lights are fully controllable, so they can basically be any color you want. You can have a disco if you wanted to, but but the red light for sort of astro events or sort of nocturnal nightlife events are really, really important, because of course red light protects your night vision, so you can have these events under sort of red light if we want to. So yeah, it's been a learning process for us to sort of work out how we can best do lights around loggerheads. So we're now talking to other public sector buildings where we can perhaps take some of that and replicate it in other areas. So it all helps, doesn't it? And I think we don't take our the quality of our skies in the Clwyd range for granted, probably because we are close to Chester and Deeside. We're not taking the quality of the lights for granted, so we are trying to do as much as we can to reduce the light within the poor light within the AUMB itself, and taking that quite seriously.
Well, you are doing excellent work. I can attest. I've seen some of the things that are going on, and it's really great. All the team at the Clwyd Range of Dee Valley are really behind it. You can tell all the residents are really behind it. The community love the event. You get lots of visitors coming for the events as well. It's been a really fantastic effort. Before I let you go, what would be your favourite dark sky memory, or the first memory of a dark sky that you can think of?
That's a tricky question, Dani.
It's a tricky question.
You should give me some notice for that one. I think being up in the Clwyd range and watching the sort of Perseids meteor showers, is fantastic. And I'm always taken by how many people want to join us on some of our dark sky events. It's like I said before, they're one of our most popular events. So being with other people to witness a spectacle like the Perseids meteor shower is absolutely fantastic. And I think it's strange that the stars are so far away from us. They're just unimaginably far away from us, aren't they, these galaxies? And yet they form this backdrop to our landscape that is such an important part of our lives. So having that experience out on the hills with groups of people is fantastic, and I can understand why it captures so many people being out there at night.
Thanks so much, David, for your time. And just to let people know, if you're listening, that all their events that they run through the year, Dark Skies and otherwise, are all on their website, and they've also got an interactive map on there which shows you all the dark sky sites in the area. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Dani.
Thanks to all our guests for being on the podcast this time, and thank you so much for listening. If you want to be involved in the Dark Skies project, please check out Project North on social media and follow the Snowdonia National Park social media channels too. We have events throughout the year, and we hope to see you all next year at the next Welsh Dark Skies Week. Diolch!